Hi, welcome back to my class, Cross-Cultural Understanding, with the third meeting with the title Intercultural Communications, with me, Andreas Yulianto from Jakarta International University, Indonesia. Today, we are going to discuss the communications, intercultural communications. We are going to have discussions about the definitions of intercultural communications and the practical things in our daily life. We believe that everybody experiences this intercultural communications. Now, let's begin with the learning objectives of this class. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to the first, define intercultural communication, interpersonal communications, and cross-cultural communications. The second one, identify and describe 7 imperatives for studying language and intercultural communications today. The third one explains how studying language and intercultural communications can lead to increased self-awareness and understanding of people who have different linguistic and cultural background. And the last one, at the end of this course, everybody is expected to be able to describe the characteristics of an ethical intercultural communicator. Well, let's begin with the introductions of this class. This chapter begins by introducing various understandings of the term intercultural communications, interpersonal communications, cross-cultural communications. Then we examine 7 imperatives for studying language in intercultural communications. Here I wrote there are 7. They are globalization, internationalization, advance in transportations and communication strategies, changing, demographic, conflict and peace, ethic and personal growth and responsibility. Well, we also draw the characteristics of an ethical intercultural communicator. Let's begin with the intercultural communications. Well, Rogers and Steinfort, 1999, define intercultural communications is the exchange of informations between individuals who are unlike culturally. Communication is basically natural, and all creations communicate intentionally or unintentionally, and they share their ideas, feeling, views about something which are then communicated either verbally or non-verbally to the members of different cultural populations. And people use language or any other behavior to convey all their messages to interlocutor. They may use a variety of language and discourse strategies in their communications. Well, the purpose is to exchange the informations. So to make other people understand our ideas, our feelings, our informations about certain things. And of course, our communications partner are different in culture with us. And here, Shuhua offers, let's say, a broader view of intercultural communications. For this applied linguist, intercultural communications refers to situations where people from different cultural backgrounds come into contact with each other, or a subject of study that is concerned with interactions among people of different cultural and ethnic groups, and comparative studies of communications patterns across cultures. Yeah. In today's era, the exchange of informations is very fast, and people from any culture and any country can communicate with each other. Situations where people from different cultural background, ethnic, ethnics, or even regions and countries, they can interact and meet face to face, either virtually or directly. Yeah, this is all about the cross-cultural communications patterns. Semofer et al. 2010. Intercultural communications involves interactions between people whose cultural perceptions and symbol systems are distinct enough to alter the communications event. There are a lot of definitions of intercultural communications and a lot of discussions and debate about this. And in this session, we are going to have clear understanding and point of view about cross-cultural communications, intercultural communication, and so on and so on. Here, Jack and Phillips, 2005, yeah, as cited in Jackson 2014, cultural membership is marked variously by race, ethnicity, nationality, language, class, age, and gender. From this intercultural communications, we know that we know what is called by cultural membership. Yeah, Jack and Pips here believe that intercultural communication is about material exchange that occurs between members of particular group. And now here the question is, what groups and where did this group come from, right? Then of course this people, this applied linguists introduce us to cultural members. Cultural members here consist of race, ethnicity, and they also are differentiated or categorized based on their nationality or even their language. And in some country, they also group some people based on their class, either low or higher, or even in the age and gender. Some countries, some area, they probably have a clear distinctions or segregations for certain criteria. So that's why these all are considered as cultural membership. So what's intercultural communications? Can you try to figure it out? Can you try to find your own ideas about intercultural communications? Probably you have learned about intercultural communications. All right, here, Jackson's 2014, intercultural communications generally refers to interpersonal communications. This is very clear that there will be always definitions of intercultural communications. There are a lot of different definitions of intercultural communications, just like the definitions of culture, where there is no definite definitions. So is intercultural communication. Then, to answer the questions above, we may be able to see intercultural communications in a fundamental way that intercultural communications generally refers to interpersonal communications between, of course, individuals or even groups that are affiliated with, let's say, different cultural groups, and probably they have been socialized in different cultural environment, such as the linguistic or language or certain behaviors. So they will be familiar with a particular culture. And this includes fundamental differences such as age, class, gender, ethnicity, language, race, nationality, and physical or mental ability, and so on and so forth. Right. This communications refers to interpersonal or individual or group communications. They interact with one person and another person. Probably they learn something or they share something. Then they send and receive one another. Right? Interpersonal communications is a form of communications that involves a small numbers of individuals who are interacting exclusively with one another and who therefore have the ability both to adapt their messages specifically for those others and to obtain immediate interpretations for them, by Lustig and Kuster 2010 in Chain Sections 2014. After we look at the meaning of intercultural communications from various perspectives, we also need to look at how this intercultural communications processes technically occurs. Of course, this cannot be separated from what is called by interpersonal communications. This interpersonal communications is a form of way, let's say, of describing the process of intercultural communications. So it can be seen more concretely, more clearly. The intercultural communications is reflected in the interpersonal communications. And it is a form of communications that involves a small number of individuals where they are interacting with each other. And today, intercultural interactions seem to have no limits. Why? Yeah, individuals, wherever they are, can interact in a face-to-face meeting. How can? Of course, it can be just through written or even directly online discourse, like you are using Facebook, Skype, Telegram, and other social medias. Of course, social media is very important part of communications. It is an important part of cross-cultural encounters. This facility makes the world very open to everyone who wants to learn about, let's say, cultures, let's say, language, so on and so forth. And of course, like what we are doing right now, I teach or I share my perspective with everybody who is listening, who is watching this video. The world very open to everyone to learn about many things. And here, intercultural communications with all intercultural communications from, let's say, from all over the world can be exist and can be facilitated through technology, through the sophisticated tools like internet, like this computer, so on and so on. Interesting, isn't it? Absolutely, yes. Why it's easy for everyone to, yeah, the world is open to reach on the corner of the globe. We can see, um, we can interact directly anytime. We have no boundaries right now. Yeah. Now, let's discuss the difference between cross-cultural and intercultural communications. How can these two be different? To be honest, cross-cultural communications and intercultural communications, both terms are interchangeably used to refer to the process or the study of other cultures, behavior, and yeah, certain things from different peoples. Here, cross-cultural communications basically talks about the comparisons of communications, behavior, and patterns in two or more cultures. Here, the coverage being compared is more general than intercultural communication. In which part? Here we are faced with the comparisons between aspects of communications between cultures. For example, let's say we talk about the politeness norms or conflict negotiation strategies in, let's say, Japanese management meeting, and it is compared with those in Irish management meetings. And these general things talk about it's about the communications behavior and patterns in two or more cultures. And here we know that cross-cultural communications research typically compares and contrasts native discourse and communications behaviors or styles in different cultures. What about the intercultural communications? Well, uh, intercultural communications here is slightly different. It discusses more or is the same as, let's say, interpersonal interactions, yeah, between members of different groups, of course. Intercultural communications studies may focus on the verbal or nonverbal behavior, attitudes, or perceptions of uh, people from different culture, linguistic background who are interacting with each other. They, the interlocutors may have a different first language and speak, both of them maybe speak a second language that is common to all of them. Let's say like we use the international language such as English, what we are discussing right now using with. This may they may speak the native speakers of, or maybe they may speak one of the native speakers of the participants, or probably they they speak the combinations of languages, such as we use the code mixing, right? So sometimes I use this particular first language and then suddenly I mix with the second languages or other languages. Well, uh, as the more they are having the intercultural communications, basically they interact with each other and build their relationship. Uh, let's say in the intercultural communications, um, a South Korean university student in Seoul, for example, interacting in English with an exchange students from Sweden. In these cultural situations, neither of the speakers are using their first language. and both surely have been socialized in different linguistic and cultural environment. That is one of the examples of the intercultural communications. So it is more about the interactions, interpersonal interactions. And let's say an elderly Buddhist monk in Bangkok who is having the conversations or is conversing with a young, uh, let's say a female or male, an individual who is probably Christian. While they share the same nationality and ethnicity, the interactants have clearly a different religious background and also differs in terms of age, like occupations and maybe gender. And this is also another example of the intercultural communications. All right, next, reasons to study language and intercultural communication. What do you think? Any idea about this? Or maybe you have a reasons why you study language and you experience the intercultural communications. Is it useful for us to learn this? That is very fundamental questions for us. Well, in fact, about intercultural communications and also the impact of the language on intercultural relations, right? Some of the fundamental influences are the factors of the globalizations. And I also mentioned this in the previous, in earlier sessions. And globalizations here, let's say, very technically influence and become the reasons why study, let's say, intercultural communications. Obviously, ethically intercultural communications is now more important than anything else. Why? You know, we need to learn how to adapt and thrive in a foreign environment and contribute to our nations, our world in the constructive and peaceful way, of course. And through interacting with people from diverse linguistic and even cultural backgrounds, we can learn more about ourselves and find respectful ways to build and maintain intercultural relationships. Now let's talk deeper or more detail about the globalizations. Well, globalizations involves a process of removing government imposed restrictions on movement between countries in order to create an open, boundaryless world economy. Scalti 2000s. With the idea, wherever we live today, we are being influenced by the forces of globalizations. And right now, we are in the time when everything is open to each other. Everything is sophisticated and, of course, modern. This phenomena of the globalizations removes restrictions that they have existed and were imposed by the former government for the various reasons. Now, everything is experiencing the movement between countries to create an open and borderless world economy. countries in the world are competing to provide their best service by, let's say, making more friendly rules, regulations. Yeah, for example, to reduce the uh, tariffs and international trade barriers, so on and so forth. Because if this doesn't happen in this area, the development of country will surely be left behind. As simple as when we do not learn from others, when we do not interact with other people, and we do not listen to what is happening in the world, then we will not know certain informations. And surely this will leave us far behind with the people who are open into interactions and collaborations with anyone and from anywhere. Knight and Dewitt, 1997, introduced us with the globalization is the flow of technology, economy, knowledge, people, values, and ideas across borders. This flow of technology, the spread of technology now everywhere. Previously, we didn't have a laptop, we didn't have that sophisticated computer technology, handphone, so on and so forth. But because of the uh, finding a good creations from the human, then they create the telephone, the communications tool, laptop, and other technologies, and then they share with many people all over the world. And right now, the communications are easily to do because of the technology, economic knowledge, because of the uh, enhancement or the quality of the people, values, ideas across the borders. One and another they teach and share their opinion, their ideas to everyone all over the world. Yeah. India and Rosaldo 2006 also introduced the globalizations. Their understanding is very relevant right now to our study of language and intercultural communications. Globalizations is not only closely related to the trade and commerce. The power of the globalizations also triggers major changes in the social, cultural, politics, and linguistic dimensions of people around the world. Um, for example, let's say this interdependence affect language policy on all the continents. Let's say right now, English becomes the language of instructions in educational institutions in non-English speaking countries. Initially, of course, English is the um, just like the other languages. But right now, because of the power of these countries like American and British, their powers influence and of course have affected the power of the languages. It also changed the linguistic code, for example. Why? Right now, the increasing of mixing of English expressions with the local language and a process of what we call as the code mixing and so on and so forth. Because there is the process of the transformations and development. How could this be? The factor is because everyone, every nation is open to receive ideas and behaviors and habits from other people, and we can learn from them. Well, English has not spread as a monolithic code. What does this mean? Due to the impact of colonialism, trade, and globalizations today, there are many real impacts that we are experiencing. Let's say there are many variations of English in the world today, which is, yeah, scholars now refers to word Englishes rather than word English. That's why English is currently called pluricentric language, because from time to time there will be many new varieties developed and are still being developed. Worldview, the number of varieties of English is growing world, all over the world. Right now, there are a lot of kinds of English. Let's say Indian English, Malaysian English, Nigerian English, Singaporean, Cameroonian, and so on and so on. These are the results of the development of the English, which is considered or called as pluricentric language. It's always developed, and it's always there will always be many varieties of the languages, especially English. Right now, the current dynamic situations, it is quite surprising. David Crystal notes that non-native speakers of English now outnumber native speakers by 3-1. Well, how did it happen? Can you try to understand or try to figure it out? Or do you have your argument about this? Of course, because of many factors we mentioned earlier, that English has become a pluricentric language. English continues to grow and has many variations. In this era of rapid globalization, we were introduced that English has also become the lingua franca in many parts of the world. What is lingua franca? Lingua franca itself is the language used in communications between speakers who do not have the same mother tongue or the same first language. The fact says so. Until now, English is still a unifying language or an international language that is studied by almost all countries in the world. Because of this language, trade, and other bilateral relations can be connected. The forces of globalizations are actually creating more interest in other languages, not only English. Mandarin, French, German, and other languages are also most studied language in the world. This language is also very strong because of the strength of the country in a various sectors. This can be predicted that the number of second language speakers of Chinese and French and other language in uh, right now continue to rise along with China's in other countries increasing global influence in other spheres like global politics, trade, commerce, and also the let's say tourism. Yeah, the impact of globalization on ways of being, Jackson 2014. Reflecting on the impact of globalization, attitude and values from others affect many aspects of our daily habits. And of course, our way of being, our ways of being has undergone many changes, consciously or unconsciously. For example, let's say we are talking about the product that we regularly buy. We might only know that the product we usually use are the best. Now, we know new products from people far away. We can switch, what's that? We can switch to buy their products. Why? Because of the promotions happening. Then another example is that the language expressions we use in online chats, in the social media. Let's say the clothes we wear because of the uh, advertisement from television, from internet, from YouTube, so on and so forth. Now we change the styles, the clothes that we wear. We regularly used to buy the traditional clothes or local product. Now we buy from other countries. Even the small things like the food we eat, the music we listen to, the television's programs, the internet sites we access, all of this certainly get the impact of globalization. The old things or the previous things can easily be replaced by something new that has been introduced to us. However, the impact of globalization is still a matter of debate. There are people who may view this as an opportunity um, and released from, let's say, it is the opportunity to be embraced and released from this stifling restrictions of nationality and nation. But there are also people who view this threat, as a threat where homogenizations has the opportunity to eliminate the distinctiveness of language and culture. As an example of the McDonaldizations, because of the global dominance of American culture, it is at the expense of the localized traditional diversity. People try to use the brand of McDonald's and replace uh, the traditional name from there. Whether one's conceptions of the globalizations is positive or negative, globalizations remains the most powerful force shaping our world today and also in the future. Yeah? This link
cause more frequent intercultural contact. And this requires the development of effective intercultural communications. Yeah, intercultural communication skills are required right now and need to be developed. Just as simple as to know more languages from all over, right? Especially the languages which is mostly spoken by international status, which have the international status. In this new global world, intercultural understanding and skills are likely to be necessary for your future, for our future career, as well as our personal life. How how impactful globalizations in our lives, right? Globalizations can be considered as a positive things and also negative things. It depends on how you see this changing, these transformations. Now, apart from the globalization, the reasons why we learn intercultural communication is because the internationalizations. Interconnectedness is now encouraging educational institutions to pay more attention to the international and intercultural dimensions of learning, teaching, and also research. Here, internationalizations is the accelerating globalizations, and here resulted in increased investment in training for knowledge industries, and also the second on foreign language teaching. Right now, there is a high demand for educated, technologically advanced, bilingual or multilingual individuals who can interact effectively with people from diverse cultural backgrounds. And of course, it is expected that they can perform successfully in a competitive global marketplace. Now, intercultural communication is required, reflecting on the increasing global interdependence and new challenge facing students and graduates in all disciplines. Higher education institutions around the world are required to, let's say, review or revisit their missions and responsibilities. Why? Today, the focus is not only on a specific skill according to their chosen field, or even how well they can master their field, but in the process, institutions now are burdened with the challenging questions, such as how can the students best, how can you or how can institutions best prepare their students to become global citizens and professionals in a diverse world. And what steps can they take to help students become internationally knowledgeable, bilingual or multilingual, and even interculturally sensitive? How can they foster intercultural competence? Intercultural competence is the ability to communicate effectively and appropriately in intercultural situations. If we don't have this competence, then how can we struggle? How can we survive in the today's era? Of course, internationalization nowadays has become a necessity in all fields. Integrating international, intercultural learning into the curriculum, of course, need to be done in order to face the current forces of globalization. We need an effort, sustained effort, to make higher education more responsive to the requirements and challenges related to the globalizations of society, economy, and labor. Kalvermark and van der Leen, 1997. Internationalizations at home. Here is the one way to face the challenge of changing time due to the globalizations. Internationalizations provides opportunities for educational institutions to develop themselves in order to facilitate their students to face globalizations. Internationalizations at home here refers to the embedding of international or intercultural perspective into local education setting to raise the global awareness, cultural understanding, and intercultural competence of faculty and students. Right, we can bring an international or intercultural perspective to our local educations. What are the goals and what are the benefits? Of course, this is to give a local students more exposure to other languages and cultures. Many higher educations and institutions right now take steps to attract students, international students to their home campus. With the programs such as students exchange or even double degree or field trip, etc. Right? There are many ways to make this internationalization happen. And we can also do the educations abroad. There has been dramatic increase in the number of students receiving some form of education abroad. They could certainly raise themselves to a higher level. Of course, this is beneficial for those who get socializations from the intercultural and national environment. Due to the current importance of getting socialized interculturally and internationally, many educators and administrators are now aware of the need for to be intensive and systematic programming. Here, courses in intercultural communications, such as the one that you may be taking now, are increasingly being offered to students in all disciplines. For what? Of course, to help optimize international educations, international worldview, international perspective, so on. This course also can help participants develop the intercultural knowledge and skills, which is essential for the successful intercultural interactions. Right, like in the area of academic, personal, or even professional. This course also can help students to understand intercultural encounters that have not unfolded as expected. And as educational institutions play a central role in the formations of citizens and future professionals. Intercultural education is vital to help prepare students for the responsible intercultural citizenship in our global community, whether in the home setting or abroad. This is very important to have this in this current situations in current era. The other parts or the other reasons why we have to learn the language and intercultural communication is because the advance in transportations and communication technologies. Well, we are aware of these things, technology, transportations. We right now can even visit, go directly and very fast to the place, even from the very far corners of the globe. Everything is connected, and of course, by reducing the physical barriers of time and distance, progress in both domains greatly enhance the exchange of people, commodities, informations, and ideas. Today, modern transportation systems uh, such as rail, road, water, underground, air, so on and so forth, facilitate the movement of people. And from one country to another country, they can go directly and easily. And it doesn't consume a lot, take a lot of time because the facilities are now growing. Large geographic distance can be covered in much less time and of course at less cost and with a greater ease than in the past. Improved transportations certainly greatly encourage economic growth, social, political, and even the intercultural context. Let's say tourism, business, educational exchange. This unprecedented population's mobility allows for more the intercultural interactions both within the countries and across borders. Well, the technological development in this era, yeah, and also the communications too, allow people from diverse languages and cultural backgrounds to interact more easily. Of course, comparing with the previous era in the past, it's quite different. Today, we have more contact with people from other cultural backgrounds than at any other time in human history, right? We can use the telecommunication systems, telephones, telegraphs, internet, and we can also use the mass media. The information is shared there through magazine, through television, newspaper, radio, book record, so on and so forth. There are a lot of ways why not that can be used. In 1962, Marshall McLuhan, a Canadian educator, philosopher, and scholar, coined the term global village to refer to the way world is shrinking. What does this mean? Of course, this is because people are becoming more and more connected to media and other communication advancement. He predicted that the ease and speed of electronic technology would have a profound impact on the global communications. And he was certainly right. Today, people from different parts of the world can interact with each other through the instant messaging like Facebook, emails, blogs, and other websites on the internet. And yeah, there are a lot of ways right now. And this enhancement facilitate the intercultural contact from many different cultural backgrounds. Informations and communications technology more and more advanced in the digital communications technology. More and more, right now, everything is digitalized. And these all are playing a critical role in educational, professional, social, and personal settings, especially in the countries that have benefited economically from the globalizations. The emergence of the range of new technologies is providing, of course, more opportunities for social interactions and collaborations. ICT consists of information technology as well as telecommunications, broadcast, media, all types of audio and video processing, and transmissions from transmission and other base control and monitoring functions. Well, the globalizations really influence a lot of sectors in our life. And social media is one of the product of the globalizations. It's the product of the enhancements of technology. Social media here is defined as a group of internet-based applications that build on the ideological and technological foundations of Web 2.0 and that allow the creations and exchange of user-generated content. There are a lot of social media that we can use to interact, to facilitate our communications with people all over the world. Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, Google Groups, Windows Online, blogs, wikis, Skype, Link, and multimedia such as YouTube by Kaplan and Henley in 2009. And the other reason is that the changing demographics. What is mean here? What can you understand from the changing demographics? Why does it become the reasons for learning language and intercultural communications? Of course, we know the human migrations. Migrations or human migrations talks about the physical movement by people from one place to another, sometimes over long distances. And one of the examples of the human migrations is the immigrations that is moving from one's home country to reside in other country. And it is providing more possibilities for intercultural interactions in many parts of the world. Migration certainly creates more opportunities for day-to-day interactions with people from diverse linguistic and cultural background. And it is another reasons why knowledge and skills of intercultural communications are important, because migrations can take many forms, such as let's say the students exchange, or even when you get married with other people and then you move to another country. And of course, the skills of the intercultural communications take an important part and role here. This may involve voluntary movement within a region, a country, or outside a person, and be motivated by a variety of aspirations, such as education opportunities, or even job prospects, living in a peaceful environment, are living in a warmer climate. And of course, as I told you, intercultural marriage. And sometimes migrations is unintentional, as in the case of ethnic cleansing and human trafficking or modern slave trade. Ethnic cleansing is the violent removal of an ethnic or religious group by another. And human trafficking is the illegal trade of human beings for sexual exploitations and forced labor. Individuals may be also placed by war, economic crisis, religious persecutions, natural or other disasters. Then they become the refugees to get places and help from other groups or countries. Several spatial migrant populations are also contributing to growing multicultural diversity in many parts of the world. Yeah, current demographic trends are providing more opportunities for intercultural interactions in many parts, such as educational institutions, in the workplace, and in the personal life. With this growing of migrations, yeah, it comes an increased need for intercultural understanding and change in the ways of that people see themselves. Right? Conflict and peace. Yeah, it is related to the demographic changing. Yeah. Increasing diversity doesn't what is that? Doesn't seem beneficial because we can increasing diversity, of course, some people might say it is beneficial, sometimes might say no. Increasing diversity doesn't beneficial because we learn and interact with new things, right? But some people, they don't want, they are afraid. In some contexts, increasing diversity increases the intercultural and racial tensions and makes this a threat to stability and peace. That is why people are not ready for the increasing the diversity. And as the world becomes more and more interdependent, the mutual understanding of people from diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds is becoming increasingly important for peace, corporations, and stability. So the question is that how to maintain this peace and stability? And before we answers to that questions, we have to know the fault lines that divide us as a people and the nations have become deeper, more raw and more legal in our nuclear age. It is essential that we enhance our understanding of conflict and its terrains so that we can navigate and physical, psychological, and spiritual challenges that threaten to shallow us creative potential and all by Lebanon and Delay 2006. Well, the acceptance, in fact, the celebrations of our individual and cultural differences. Now, how to maintain this peace and stability? Yes, the answer for these situations is the understanding of the fact. 1978. The key to community and the good peace is the acceptance. And yeah, Scotland et al. Dramatic advances in information technology, especially the growth of the World Wide Web and the rapid globalizations of the world's economy, have in many ways brought people closer together. It is true that the conflict is unavoidable. Conflict can happen anywhere, anytime. This can occur within a family, among friends or colleagues. It can be in educational or health institutions, or even in a workplace. Because of what? Because the rapid globalizations of the world's economy and this brought people closer together. Yeah, there will be, of course, the positive sides and also the negative side. At the same time, wars, terrorism, environmental devastations, and massive changes in the world economic order have resulted in a greater political and social fragmentations. Scotland et al. 2012. Yeah, in responding to this dynamic of life, it is critical that we all acquire the knowledge, respect, and skills that necessarily to mediate intercultural differences of opinion in an effective and appropriate manner. Intercultural conflict is defined as a perceived or actual incompatibility of the cultural values, situational norms, goals, faiths, orientations, scarce resources, styles or processes, and or outcomes in face-to-face or mediated contexts. And the frustrations of the intercultural conflict can, yeah, run high if we don't know how to deal with the communications problems. If inappropriate or ineffective conflict negation strategies continue to be used, misunderstanding can quickly develop into complicated and protracted intercultural conflict situations. Wow. So now we know that what to do, we know what to do if we face a misunderstanding problem. Yes, we must be able to effectively use negotiation strategies like what Jackson 2014 explained here. Of course, we ourselves must first develop our self-awareness if misunderstanding can occur, because we do not understand the meaning of the differences in the current intercultural communications. Intercultural conflict competence also is very fundamental and necessarily to be learned. In today's globalized world, it is very important to learn to manage intercultural conflict appropriately and effectively, of course. It is the duty for everyone in our personal, academic, and professional lives to further develop competence in intercultural conflict. And yeah, here, it is not easy. But is there any way? Yes. Lebaron and Pillay, 2006, mentions to achieve the intercultural conflict problems solutions. Here, we have to have this conflict fluency and cultural fluency. The first is to acknowledge conflict as the difference that give us a choice on growth. And conflict occurs naturally. Of course, we have a choice, run from the conflict or solve it. Conflict shapes not only who we are, but how we work together and enhance in conflict, and then how we solve it. And now we talk about the ethics. It is inevitable that the world we live in right now is increasingly interconnected, and this means that individuals of different age, gender, language, and so on must coexist with us. This can still be positive thing by opening up exciting possibilities for the collaborations and enrichment. On the other hand, this contact can also present challenging and ethical issue. And in all areas of our life can be experience these issues like medical, political, professional, religious, business, and so on. In essence, the moral or ethical environment in which we live here, as written by Blackburn 2009, determines what we find acceptable or unacceptable, admirable, and contemptible. It determines our conceptions of when things are going well and when they are going badly. It determines our perceptions of what is due to us and what is due from us as we relate to others, right? And it shapes our emotional responses, determining what is a cause of pride or shame or anger and gratitude, or what can be forgiven and what cannot. It gives us our standards of behavior, as introduced by Blackburn 2009. Well, a code of ethics consists of guidelines that spell out what is right or wrong behavior in everyday life, as well as the professional context such as educational, business, healthcare, and legal. Jackson's here also give us the examples of the Christianity about the 10 Commandments as the ethics, as the code of ethics for the Christians, and also for the 5 precepts of Buddha, which is acknowledged by the Buddhist people. Yeah. So these are the code of ethics for certain religious group. And you know that an understanding of what is right and wrong certainly affects many things. It certainly affects our behavior in our personal and professional lives. In addition to that, it also affects our attitude and behaviors toward those of different beliefs and traditions. And when we are uncomfortable with all these differences and feel under threat, we may disrespect the other person's preferred identity. And sometimes we use the unethical and harmful language that is racist or sexist. This discomfort or fear of differences is actually a weakness for us. Why? Because fear of difference can lead to the other realizations or other. And then the other aspects why we learn language and also intercultural communication is because of the personal growth and the responsibility. Laboring here and PLA, through the course of our life, we have many opportunities to learn about others, their cultures, and their ways of being in the world, and their diverse stories and needs. We can choose to go toward these opportunities or move away from them. We can live amidst differences and ignore them, or notice the differences that divide us and plant them for their richness. Intercultural communications does bring us together with people who are different in culture, language, and others. When we meet them, they feel very uncomfortable and even seem threatened. We may feel the ethnocentrism because we feel like you are different than us and you should be in another place, not here. Something like that. So that's why we shouldn't develop this ethnocentric mind here. In this study of language and intercultural communications, this invites us to grow together in terms of understanding cross-cultural differences and awareness about all the differences. The challenge is that when we face linguistic and cultural differences in our personal lives, we are going to, let's say, are we going to distance ourselves because we are not ready for the differences? In fact, we are given the opportunity to discover more about ourselves and the people who have been socialized with different environments. The characteristics of an ethical intercultural communication. Here, an individual who is an ethical intercultural communications are characterized by the first, regard people as equal, even when their beliefs are or values differ. Second, actively seeks out and interacts with persons of diverse background, ethnic, religious, gender, linguistic, physically disabled. And third, listens attentively and refrains from making sad negative judgment about the behaviors of people from different cultural or linguistic background. Fourth, patiently ask questions to confirm an intent meaning. Fifth, recognize that misunderstanding may arise due to linguistic and or cultural differences. And then the sixth one, seek and provides the verbal and non-verbal feedback to ensure that messages were received as intended. Seven, makes a genuine effort to learn about the language and cultural practices of people who have been socialized in different cultural backgrounds. Eight, works from the perspective that the behavior of people from other cultural background is apt to be rational when understood and its situational and cultural context. 9, values intercultural incorporation and peaceful conflict mediations resolutions. And 10, recognize the diversity within cultural groups and acknowledge that no individual can serve as representative of an entire community of culture. 11, seeks to include all voices in intercultural interactions. And the 12, treats people of other cultures with respect and dignity. Adapted from Chan and Stersta, 1998. Asylum transactions. The last is the questions. We are coming to the last sessions of this course. We have 3 questions and please answer these questions. What are some reasons why people might be reluctant to communicate with people who have a different linguistic and cultural background? Second one, what do you think the populations will be in 20 years, in 50 years? Or do you think the need for bilingualism or multilingualism and intercultural competence is growing? Why are you interested in learning more about language and intercultural communications? What do you hope to gain by exploring the issue and themes this text? That's it about our meeting today. And next, we are going to have other discussions about the intercultural communications and all the processes and things and elements related to this. That's it for today. Thank you very much and goodbye.